The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Well, hi there, everyone. It's Richard Carson here at SoftChoice, and yes, you are in the right spot. We're here today for another SoftChoice webinar. This one will really focus on Power BI and sort of how it's taking a different view and light on your business. A conversation that's pretty near and dear to my heart, as being exposed to Power BI just a matter of a year or so ago. I was really amazed at what challenges this was solving for me as a marketer here at SoftChoice. In terms of looking back, the manual reporting that's required, the requirement to talk to teams to create data for you, and you almost felt like that data was just beyond your fingertips in terms of the view you need to get. Or in other cases, you weren't sure if it was data you could trust. What we're going to be talking about today is really how we're going to start to empower end users and really create methods for them to, and for the business to actually make better decisions based on insight. We've got a great set of subject matter experts joining us today, but before we jump into the content, sometimes what we like to do is to get a little bit of feedback off the top and help to refine the message and make sure that we can really tune it to sort of where you're at in terms of your data and data analytics journey as well. So I'll go ahead and just launch a quick poll here. We're looking for your feedback in terms of your experience and exposure to Power BI and the suite of business analytics tools that exist there. So first off, are you pretty experienced with it? Have you kind of had like a little bit of exposure, but you'd like to go a little bit deeper into some of the possibilities? And then flat out, are we having a one-on-one experience here and where we can just kind of level set for folks? So why don't you go ahead and help us kind of frame the conversation. Just another point, help you get the most out of the session today. We will be pausing throughout for questions and answer periods. So feel free to chime in the chat window to your right, and you'll be able to ask your questions, and we'll get that addressed by our subject matter expert, who I'll introduce in just a moment here as well. So I'll give you just another few seconds to respond to the quick poll, and then we'll dive in. Okay. All right. Well, without further ado, I wanted to go ahead and introduce our subject matter expert for the day. I'm pleased to have Greg Traynor, one of our solution architects, senior solution architects here at SoftChoice, join us to really take us on this journey and to help kind of dive into a few points. Greg, I could give it a college try to introduce you, but I probably wouldn't do it justice. So Greg, do you mind just sharing a little bit about your background and also perhaps just a little bit of a view of your role here at SoftChoice as well?
Certainly. Richard, thank you very much for the introduction and handoff here. So yeah, my name is Greg Traynor, Senior Microsoft Solutions Architect with SoftChoice. My role here is around Microsoft Cloud strategy, helping customers understand and apply that strategy to their business and business outcomes. There is a slight slant to my role, and my focus is around analytics and business intelligence. So as we'll go through the webinar and the content today, I hope, in terms of everyone who's here, that this is a key junction point for a lot of businesses is understanding their data. And I'm excited to be here today, and thank you for the time to present this topic as well. It's near and dear to my heart too, and really would look forward to getting started. And let's jump into here. And please, as Richard mentioned, make use of the Q&A window. Please don't hold back. If you have any particular questions, we certainly would be happy to answer them or table them if we need to, and come back and address them with you later on. So please make good use of that as well. So as we look at our agenda for today, we've got quite a bit to cover. And the reason for this is understanding that folks are coming from various backgrounds, different elements within your own organizations, perhaps different experiential areas of your own career, and how analytics and data might apply to how you view your business and what decisions you make in your business. So we'll take a quick glance at how we are now in the throes, and for the last couple years now, and it's really hitting a stride and some true momentum around this idea of digital transformation and why data is becoming so critical to the success of businesses. This is a crowded space as well. Power BI from Microsoft is just one of many utilities out there to delve into and find keen insights around data and analytics. We'll look at how Power BI compares to all of them. Of course, the content, the meat of our webinar today is around Microsoft Power BI specifically. We'll look at how this one tool is a pretty unique tool across many different areas of a business when you take into account end users and analysts and the IT staff and also developers. So we'll look at all those different areas. A little forward-looking too about what's on the horizon. May not be applicable to every business, but the horizon of data and analytics applying to everyday life. What does that future look like? And then maybe some prescriptive next steps for the folks here on the call as you begin to kind of internalize the data and then content that we're sharing today. What are your next steps? What do you do next to try to invigorate your business? Whether you have already gone down this road to a little bit, and how you try to reinvigorate and get things moving again or re-energize, or perhaps that first step on that journey of engaging analytics within your organization. So as we look at how we've come to where we are today, and we look back over the last couple hundred years, there have been some momentous occasions on that little timeline of where technology and people and information and capabilities kind of meet at a crossroads. And we are in that point in time right now. Technology is playing an increasing role in everything our customers do by shaping our growth, disrupting industry landscapes, and providing a catalyst for this transformation. In terms of impact, digital transformation can be considered like that next industrial revolution, providing the catalyst for new business models, products, services, and experience that impact not only businesses, but society overall. I mean, you can just think about the last time you might have bought something online and how there are recommendations for other things to purchase and you know, discounts available, or making you aware of new opportunities for purchases. Just in that consumer segment alone, we've become consumers of this analytics and data and may not even have realized it. In addition, from a business perspective, we are truly at a crossroads. We have 3 generations of workforce individuals largely represented within our organizations. Truly a ton of knowledge and intellect and experience that have been around in business, growing these businesses for decades. And you spin forward to today, and you've got new college graduates and people coming up in the ranks who are just starting out in their business careers. And how do we integrate them, everybody, all 3 generations of workforce, how do we integrate them, but also realize that the people who are the leaders of tomorrow, these people are largely called digital natives. These are the young folks within the organization that they've always had a smartphone. They've always had a tablet. They don't know anything other than the internet. And by and large, they're consuming most of their information on a mobile device, not on a laptop, not on a desktop, but they're consuming and acting on information from a mobile device. That's the world that they've grown up in. So businesses need to make this transformational leap. And there's already known statistics that leaders in digital transformation businesses, where they're leading this change, they're generating more revenue each and every year. So there's a couple of things happening, dynamics that are happening within an organization that account for some of these things that you're seeing, and analytics is no different. There's a glut of data out there, and we're just sort of getting the tip of the iceberg in terms of that hitting the main road around how people can gain access to it and how easy can that be done. So if we look at this crowded landscape, look back to 2015 over to the left side of this window, and this is that Gartner Magic Quadrant. So those leaders in vision and challenging the status quo, it's a crowded space. You spin forward to 2016, and it gets to thin out just a little bit. And if you look at this a little more carefully, you can maybe study the names on these charts, you'll notice that some names drop off and some names get added as new up-and-comers in this industry segment, which is huge. You get to the current year, as of February of 2017, that magic quadrant, that top right quadrant, is getting even leaner. There are clearly 2 leaders in this space. arguably 3 if you include Click as well. So if you've been around analytics, if you're looking at opportunities to improve business intelligence within your organization, you're aware of these players. This is no strange content to those folks on this call. But for others who might be new to the game and new to the conversation, realize that there is a beginning to emerge clear leaders in this space, and of course Microsoft being one of those amongst a very select few of others as well. So why is this so critical? Why are businesses paying so much attention to data? Well, in today's world, we have the ability to collect vast amounts of data, whatever our business might be, whether it's sales or marketing or retail, warehousing, industrial, you name it, development of software or other products or services, even just in an online world. Data is being collected constantly. The trick has always been, what do you do with it? How do you take action? So if we look at these 2 sides of this slide, 2 sides of this spectrum of data collection, just vast amounts of repositories of data around line of business applications or third-party applications, maybe things, benchmark data that might be able to glean from folks who are doing that kind of research, like a Gartner or a Forrester. But then also, then you flip to the other side as, what do I do with that? How do I take action? How do I make a nice, cohesive, intelligent decision and take action on that? For most businesses, they're down here in the lower left-hand side of this slide. What happened yesterday? What happened last month? What happened last quarter? Maybe I can compare to how I did last year and see if I've made some improvements. And a lot of times this is good. It's a great start, because that means that now the ownership, the leaders in that business are paying attention, and they're using data to drive maybe some ability to make better decisions going forward, or to replicate good decisions in the past, to replicate those good outcomes going forward. But typically it's always looking back historically. If folks are really good at this, they get to a point where they say, well, why did it happen? Why do we have the outcome we had, whether that be good or bad? Why? And you can begin to study and understand the story that the data is beginning to try to tell you. The next step up from there is, well, if I can replicate the good or diminish the bad in terms of why it happened, maybe I can become a little bit more able to forecast what will happen. So maybe I'm a marketer and I put something in market with a coupon or an incentive of some kind, and it drove sales through the roof. Fantastic. Let's go do that again. And if we can tie back our actions into the data and the success that was there, let's make this very predictable about why and what will happen if I continue to do these things. Or on the other side, maybe there was a bad outcome. Maybe there was something not very happy in the data. Well, let's figure out why it happened, and let's not do that again. Let's not have that coupon land, you know, when a competitor does something different or something in that same market. Let's try to find a different market to go exercise. So lots of different ways to understand what the data is telling you. Now, the pinnacle of this, and you see this in businesses like GE or Amazon, Microsoft, Google, all those big players, they're now automating and using data to make automated recommendations about decisions or actions the business should be making. So the idea of what should I do, and that you can only get to that point when you begin to integrate all sorts of data points, all sorts of repositories of data, this idea of disparate data buckets kind of sitting out there, and, well, I've got a bucket over here and a bucket over there, and I've got my line of business application over here, and maybe I've got people in the business in the warehouse, they're generating these CSV files or Excel spreadsheets. It can be mind-boggling for a CFO or an analyst of some kind, maybe a controller, to try to understand, how the heck can I bring all this stuff together to help make it a good decision? And so that's why there's a lot of attention being brought to this topic. And there's so many players you see involved, because it's a question that every business has. How can I use what I know to make better decisions for tomorrow, to continue to be competitive, to beat my competitors, and to ultimately be really successful in terms of what my business objectives are into the future? So if we look at this, I'm going to take a bit more of a Microsoft lens now on some of these things. So if we look at this about aligning priorities around what I have in my technology infrastructure, how am I dealing with the cloud? Every business has some concept of leveraging cloud, or maybe at worst, I know it's there, I don't know how to use it just yet, or at best, yeah, I'm already in the cloud, I'm doing things already, maybe I'm in Office 365, or I'm leveraging some other ERP system that's cloud-based or SaaS-based. Fantastic. But if I can take that and I can begin to tie that into focusing my energies on my customers, which obviously drives a lot of business success, I'm in a very cloud-centric world. You hear a lot of big players talking about cloud first, mobile first, all these different firsts and leading edge type stuff. Well, the cloud is an enabler. It's not just a buzzword. It's an enabler of these technologies that makes it very easy for many businesses to accomplish things that they couldn't just years ago. But if I can focus on my customers by leveraging the cloud and leveraging this technology, I can begin to layer in security, because I'm dealing with a lot of things that may not be on premise. They may not be in the four walls of my business, and I need tools that can secure it, but still allow me the leverage and the agility to deal with the data and the customers that are driving the success of my business. And finally, look about changing that conversation. If I've got a great underpinning of aligning priorities, I've got a nice security interlay between myself and how I'm dealing with interacting with my customers or business partners, how do I change that conversation to build further trust? How can I engage my customers more or empower my employees to do perhaps more with less? You know, the companies are getting very, very lean today because it's very, very agile. You've got to move fast to keep that competitive edge. And always, always, always optimizing any business processes, enhancing any services that we're already delivering. How can I leverage these sort of game-changing components of my business to drive real trust and eventually transform the delivery of my products and services to my customers? That's the bottom line. Got to make always constant improvements, always be driving at success. And one part of that we're going to focus on here today is this idea of an intelligent cloud. That's, if you look at this picture and if you agree with it, this is one component of a really, really big, vast strategy for any size business, whether they be small or enterprise, doesn't matter. These are the same kind of components that most folks are dealing with, and what's driving analytics is this idea of intelligent cloud. So if we can spin forward and look at this at another high level, we've got three main areas of data and intelligence we really want to be paying attention to. At that first layer, this is that be able to bring data, any data, into the business to support business strategy. Now, that assumes there's a clear strategy the business wants to use. This is the idea of taking data and monetizing it. I don't want data just for data's sake. I want to monetize this stuff so that can really drive success in my business and I can grow. If I can't do that, I may not be here much longer because my competitors, they're really kicking my pants. I got to figure this thing out. So how can I use any data that's available to me to drive and support that business strategy? If I can nail that one, that next layer is, okay, great. I want to be able to predict and respond proactively to data. This idea of taking live streams of data. Now, this is not applicable to every business, but the near-term ability to look at what happened just moments ago, or even if it's just yesterday or last week, whatever critical to your success in your business, how easily is it for you to predict and respond proactively to those data inputs? It's very, very difficult for a lot of line of business applications today that are made for a particular business segment like construction or finance or any of those types of really segmented vertical line of business applications. A lot of businesses, they're beholden to what the line of business application provider has given to them in the sense of reporting and analytics, which quite honestly, in a lot of cases, is not adequate. So how can I then take this data, and it might be from my line of business application, but other data as well, and become proactive and predictable about those outcomes? And the last layer here, again, well beyond the scope of this conversation, is how can I continue to learn and engage with artificial intelligence? Guys, it's on the horizon, whether we like it or not. It may be spun in an ugly way, maybe spun in a fantastical kind of way. In either case, artificial intelligence is here already, and it will begin to expand. And it's going to expand very rapidly. If anything, if we can use even previous markers or indicators of technology adoption as any way to try to categorize that, artificial intelligence is here to stay and it will be flourishing and growing here in the next couple of years. But for our conversation today specifically, we're going to zero in on this idea of supporting our business strategy with any and all types of data within our organizations. So just a quick view of what this might look like. Again, we're zeroing in a little bit more on that Power BI conversation here, but all this stuff is sort of background, backdrop, and an underlaying of this conversation. So this is just an indicative slide of really any business. Any size business somewhere, whether you're a smaller business or a larger business, if you look at that circle diagram on the left, you have some part or all of those components running in your business. I would argue that every business has a website. You're going to have web data coming at you, even if it's just Google Analytics. You're going to have some kind of data that you're collecting. You may not be using it today, but you've got some kind of data that you're already using. So everybody should be in that second tier, and just about everybody should be in that traditional data tier there at the bottom. You're going to have some kind of ERP, CRM, business application. It may be QuickBooks. It may be Sage. It may be some other big application that sits inside of your organization that helps manage your business, that is managing that back office, the inventory, the work hours, project hours, realization of revenue, all these different things that line of business applications help drive our knowledge about our own businesses. We've all got that. And so at least we're in two tiers here. That big data thing, well, that really is at the moment that's still reserved for those bigger players, right? Not all of us might be in that space, but just the same, you're going to see here very quickly how Power BI spans all three of these areas. And what you have here on the right is this idea of this quick view, it's a little snapshot of what you get with Power BI. So a lot of people say, well, why not Excel? Excel's pretty cool. I've been able to do VLOOKUPs and HLOOKUPs and all these different things with Excel. Power BI brings the visualizations and the interactivity with that data to life. And truly a different way to view your business. In a lot of businesses, they've never seen data presented this way, and with the ability for them to act and make a decision in this way. So really, really interesting positioning of a product like Power BI to a marketplace that spans both small businesses to enterprise businesses. Whatever data you got, you're going to see how this tool can apply. So from a Power BI perspective and a Microsoft perspective, as they view this in three waves. That initial wave, I'll call it Sneakernet. So the boss says, hey, I need a report that tells me how many widgets I sold yesterday, last week, last month, last quarter, and compare it to the same period as last year, and have it roll every time. And you know what, maybe have it send it to me in the email or drop it as a PDF in my inbox, that kind of a thing. What's nice about that was the business had knowledgeable people within the organization, typically a database analyst, or I should say a database administrator, and they could go to them and say, hey, write me a report. Well, what oftentimes happened is that report would come back to the boss. She would look at it and she'd say, huh, that's good. But you know what, now that I know this, how did I get here? Could you tell me more about this number? Could you tell me a little bit more about that aspect of what I'm seeing in this fairly static report? And Sneakernet starts up, right? They run back down the hall, come back a few days later, here's the new report with what you asked for, and invariably there are more questions, which is great, right? You're engaging the business ownership, business leaders in managing data and managing the business in a smarter way. It's fantastic. The problem is that's a static report. There's no interaction. They can't, and they have to wait, right? The more you have to wait to make a decision means you might have lost an opportunity to drive revenue. This idea of driving data to monetize it to drive my business success. And that gave rise to the second wave, the self-service BI. So give knowledgeable analysts or end users within the organization access to some tools. And tools that could interact with some data. And typically this happened with which was, I've got a database administrator and the business goes, it's like almost going to the back room and negotiating to get your own data out. Hey, I got to look at this glob of stuff and I'd like you to let Susie or Matt over here, I'd like you to let them kind of look at that with this tool. And it was this back and forth about carving out little chunks of data to allow analysts to look at it. But the nice thing about it was these analysts, different than perhaps a database administrator, the analyst understands the business. And when they look at data, it tells them a story. It's got a lot more power, it's got a lot more color behind it than just flat out numbers. And so this was a really nice addition, a nice little wave on this journey that we're taking. But where we find ourselves today is end user business intelligence. Anybody, not just an analyst, should have access to this data. That sales rep who's walking into their customer that they're looking to beat out a competitor, it can pop up on their iWatch or their Apple Watch or something, their tablet or their phone. They can look at the real-time data and make a decision before even going into that meeting. how they should position their sales pitch perhaps, or knowing that we just landed a great incentive in this market space, we're going to try to move it to another market. Let's go analyze the demographics of that market perhaps, and let's land this incentive in the same way we did previously where we had the same kind of success, but maybe let's try to grow it by 10%. That ability to have anybody in the organization have access to the data, and not only that, but be able to interact with it. What can they do with it? Because everybody's going to have different questions, and you're going to drive your database administrator trying to create all these wazoo reports to answer every conceivable question. But now you've got a tool, well, you see here with Power BI, where anybody in an organization can have access to the data and act on it in an appropriate way for their role in the organization. So let's break this open a little bit, and let's look across 4 main areas within every organization. You have end users. You got people out there that are just producing. They come to work, they're excited to be there, and they want to do good. Let's enable them with data. We have analysts, people who are actually studying the data, trying to understand, what is it telling me? What advice can I come out of with this and engage my counterparts or my management team, my executive leadership team around telling a story and monetizing what I'm seeing here. How can I engage the business to do more of the good and do less of the bad? Certainly, IT has a part to play here as well. Like I mentioned, you've got database administrators perhaps. Maybe it's an outsourced party, whoever it might be. Maybe it's your line of business partner. There's a role to play here for IT. They're managing the infrastructure. They're managing the applications the data sits on. They have a definite part to play here as well. In addition to the fact, if you do have a web presence and maybe you've got an online market space, or you do a lot of interactions in a SaaS-based or a highly embedded API-like environment, there's a role for developers to play here as well. And believe it or not, all 4 of these segments of your business can use the same tool for really powerful outcomes. And of course, we're talking about Power BI. And it's the idea of, as an end user, I want to be able to experience my data anywhere I go, at any time, on any device, right? This actually comes from sort of that Microsoft mantra of the anywhere access and that cloud first mentality. So we're looking at Power BI here. Currently, it's in over 90,000 organizations in over 185 countries. That's how prevalent Power BI has become in a very, very short amount of time. In addition to the fact that Power BI enables us to look at on-premise data. SAP might be appropriate for some, Oracle, maybe you've got SQL servers or IBM databases running within your organizations. Maybe you're a larger shop with lots of data and you're using Hadoop. You move up into that next tier, it's not Microsoft-centric data. It's online data. It's Marketo if I'm running marketing strategy and marketing programs. It's Salesforce if I'm trying to engage my sales teams around their activities and I need to get great reporting. Again, I might have QuickBooks. And I want to use Power BI to get out more information from QuickBooks that I can't get from QuickBooks alone. And boy, maybe I'd like to tie that into my SQL Server database about inventory or accounts payable or other I want to tie these things together. And certainly you get out to that cloud layer, that idea around Azure and Office 365, maybe you're using Dynamics CRM or AX or Great Plains. How can I integrate this thing? If you look at this left-hand column here as a column of items to tap into, Power BI can interact with all 3 areas and tie them together in ways you've never seen before. And that is just the power of being able to build intelligence within your organization. And again, we've got this idea of Power BI is just a starting point to be able to start with intelligent applications and be able to do statistical analysis, maybe leverage machine learning, which Power BI has built into it. You don't pay for that. Machine learning is built into this tool, that if you actually feed it your information, machine learning in the background says, hey, did you know? I found this in your data. Did you even recognize this? It gives you those keen insights that maybe you've not even thought to ask. In addition, Power BI gives this idea of live dashboards, so that as I want to, maybe my business requires real-time interaction with the data. And so Power BI will allow that in a dashboard setting, a very visual, as you can see here. You could eyeball that really quickly and understand perhaps if this was your business, how well you were doing or where you might want to pay attention to. And maybe some of these metrics in these bars are adjusting on the fly. Be able to drill down and drill through the reports and visualizations that you've got here as well. And of course, building in those key performance indicators. Again, we're trying to monetize what we're doing with this data. I need indicators to tell me if I'm doing well or I need to change course. and I need to be able to see them very, very quickly. In addition, Power BI, and like nothing else that Microsoft is doing around mobility, anytime, anywhere access to data and services. So whether you're a Windows, 100% Windows user, maybe you're a hybrid like most, where you're using maybe iOS and Android devices, or perhaps you've got a really great web presence where you share a lot of this data with folks, and you want to be able to have a quick and easy way to deploy this information via HTML5 as a web developer. Anywhere you go, any device you're on, you're going to have access to this information. Really, really powerful capability, and it's just built into the service. There's no infrastructure for you to purchase to get started. You're just buying into a web service like a subscription like Office 365, and you get all these enabling tools and services that come along with it that, again, I don't know any business that would want to invest that much time, energy, and people to producing the infrastructure required to support this. And Microsoft, you can tap into it very quickly. So now let's take a look at this from an analyst point of view. Again, these are the people who understand the business, and they're in probably the best position to understand, what is the data telling me? What story am I finding here? And a lot of times these analysts have grown up using Excel. Right, Excel has been the tool for a long, long time. Even in organizations that had one-off line of business applications or one-off maybe analytics applications as well, Excel was still heavily used. But you know what Microsoft found out is, while Excel was heavily used, it did have limitations. So a couple of years ago, they actually built in some of these capabilities you see in Power BI into the Excel platform, but they still had this limitation around visualizations. And that's really where Power BI comes from. This ability to visualize my data within my organization. But the nice thing here from an analyst point of view is, whether they're using Excel or they're really, really willing to learn a new tool, they can use both things around Power BI. Heavy Excel users, knowledge workers, analysts, they're not lost in this game. They have a part to play. Those investments you've made in those people and maybe training or those types of things, they're not lost. Still has a part to play in the Power BI world. As well, from an analyst point of view, I'm looking to tap into data, right? I may still be dealing with database administrators who are parsing out views of data so that I can go manipulate them. Maybe I've got OLAP cubes in the background that they're giving me access to as well. But from an analyst point of view, I can use one tool. I can tap into all three, and we got three little samples here, 3 different objects of data, buckets of data. I can pull them into Power BI, and if you're a database person, you realize what you're looking at here. That's a relationship diagram. With Power BI, I can build relationships between these disparate data sources outside of the data sources. So I'm using Power BI as the glue, the intermediary between the sources, and creating these linkages between them. So I can be able to connect and transform this data in any way I want. I can add measures and calculations and dimensions to the data that I wouldn't be able to previously. Not on my own, not without a tool like this. And again, I can then extend my analysis to support other technologies. So really, really nice tool that does all sorts of things for all different sizes of businesses. The next area here, as we talked about, was this IT professionals, right? These people who are managing our back office, who are keeping all the lights on, right? Keeping everything productive and moving forward. So the back office folks, they're managing the infrastructure. They have the SQL servers. They're managing the security around the data, right? Boy, any data in an organization has got to be kept secure. And so we rely on our IT teams to maintain the integrity of the data, the applications that interact with the data, the storage of the data, the backups, the security, and of course access, right? We want to make sure that we secure the access to that data. And we really rely on our IT teams to do that. And so what they're responsible for is interacting with our end users, our business analysts, our folks out in the field, and they've got to be able to manage this, all right? So we're introducing a new tool perhaps, but what can we do to enable the IT team to stay connected? What capabilities does that tool bring to allow them to have still an easy, predictable way to manage that data moving forward? Because there's going to be pressure put on them, because as soon as business owners, business leaders get access and start to learn about these capabilities, they're going to want it right away. And they're going to be driving at how can I get this? And they're going to be putting pressure on IT to make it happen. And so it's important to realize that whether you are using SQL Server analysis services in your business, and you've got, maybe you've got teams of people who are there supporting it and are knowledgeable about it, that they're still involved with this game plan. They're still involved with this strategy. How do I strengthen this ability to create a multi-dimensional view of data? Again, we're talking about looking at different disparate data repositories online, on-prem, SaaS-based, whatever the case might be, and bringing them all together. And when you get into that, oftentimes what happens is the business wants to know, how do I refresh my data? That's important. If you're a highly transactional business and you're looking to really monetize and make decisions based on this data, you need to have a live connection. That's going to put immense pressure on IT to make that happen. Does the platform, right, our BI platform, does it provide a quick and easy way to do that securely? And certainly with Power BI, there is. There's this idea of gateway technology that's built into the tool that now IT can be a part of this story. They can be a part of this strategy and the implementation to drive better success of data and knowledge within the organization by providing secure access to whether it be online or on-prem resources. And managing the interaction between the two so that as things get created, as these visualizations get created with the Power BI tool, IT is knowledgeable about the fact that it's being kept secure. Even if you have things that are on-premise in a SQL Server database. Of course, what's new and different here too around Power BI is this ability, is this idea of this tabular model of data, which is also multi-dimensional, right? So this idea of how to store and analyze the data in new ways, IT is going to have a lot to do with that, right? Your database administrators are still going to have to get on board with this. But understanding, if we go all the way back to the beginning of this presentation, we're trying to drive at action. How do I take my data and create actions out of them that are good and can make improvements to the business continually? And I've got to have ability to have access to the data and refresh the data really easily. That last area that we talked about in terms of the development team. So developers are a key part of this, right? They're the ones who are typically in the background that are helping to shape and mold and deliver content to people where they need it. So maybe you've got great SharePoint environments. Maybe you've got blogs or websites that are public facing. Maybe you have mobile applications and you'd like to share data in new ways with your consumers of that data, your customers or your business partners, whatever the case might be. You need to be able to extend and integrate Power BI knowledge and capabilities into those applications as well. So that's a really important aspect to remember here as we get into Power BI. Nobody's left out. We're including end users, analysts, IT professionals, database administrators, and of course developers to be able to get part of this story, to be part of the strategy, and everybody can be part of the success that comes from this kind of an exercise. So I've talked quite a bit. We're going to pause now for some questions, and I think Richard, you might have a poll for us to look at as well.
That's right. That's right. Thanks, Greg. Really eye-opening, and there are a number of questions trailing in here. So I would just welcome those on the line to just enter their questions in the Q&A pane. It should be on the right-hand side of your screen there as well. Why don't we go ahead and launch a poll just to get a pulse from you in terms of some of the pains that you've heard about, do you relate with them? Is this something that you believe that you would anticipate investigating further in the future? Beyond that, while that poll is up, Greg, why don't we hop on one of the questions that came in just a few moments ago? And I think this is a pretty common one that you probably hear pretty often, but probably on the tips of most people's tongues as well out there. This one comes in from Ronald. So Ronald asked, Excel seems to have a lot of the same capabilities. Do I really need to get Power BI?
Yeah, no, that is a very typical question that we get when you're out there talking with folks. So there's a lot of truth to that statement. So Excel does have a lot of great capabilities, and particularly when you deal with Excel through Office 365 subscription, there are some add-ins you can have access to that give you some of the same capabilities around some data analysis, for sure, the querying of the data, the ability to tap into some data sources. As I mentioned, Power BI was an outgrowth of what Microsoft began to introduce in Excel a number of years ago. What you're really missing, though, is that ability to have great visualizations, right? I've seen some customers with very, very large spreadsheets. Excel built this behemoth, but you can't see it in one screen. You got to scroll right, down, left, all over the place. An ability to visualize that data to drive out key indicators, to drive out outliers in the data, That's where Power BI really shines. And as I mentioned as well, Excel still has a part to play. So there are talented folks within a lot of organizations that have been using Excel for literally decades. And those staff members are not left out in the cold. They're vital to the success of these kinds of endeavors because they've been working with the data for so long. They truly understand the ins and outs of it, and putting a tool like Power BI in their hands can only enhance their ability to understand and interpret what they're seeing, and again, provide that valuable feedback back into the organization. But great question. Again, one that we do typically hear. So sure.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. Ron, hopefully that answered your questions. So really just to recap, Greg, it's really about the visualization capabilities, and I can attest to this myself, just the ability to actually get a clear picture as a visual learner myself, but also to, when you're looking at, thousands, if not millions of records, making sure that we, get a view of what's real and what really isn't that impactful in terms of outcomes or opportunities. Another question coming in from Sean here. And a little bit of a sort of competitive landscape. I think you touched on the Gartner Magic Quadrant in the space. He's asking, why choose Power BI over Qlik or Tableau? So any perspective on that?
Yeah, no, certainly. It's a very, very competitive landscape. There's a couple different ways to address this. And address might not necessarily be the right word, but ways to view this from a business point of view. Some companies are already down the road of a Qlik or a Tableau, or I might even mention Domo. There are lots of players out there in the space. And a lot of investments been made around there. And Power BI may not have a great place to play in a business that is solely focused on those other applications, because they probably provided training and other resources to get these analytics practices inside the organization off the ground. What I can say, though, from a business perspective, twofold. One is strictly economic. So Power BI is far less expensive to operate than Qlik or Tableau. There's lots of data around that. Now, that's not the only driver, right? If it's meaningful enough for a business to use a product to drive out success, and they truly believe success will come from that product, they will invest, right? So that's not such a big game changer. The other one that typically rears its head in a way is around usability. So a lot of businesses are going to the cloud for other workloads, other products, service segments within their organization. So email, collaboration, productivity. And when you get to that point, Office 365 certainly is going to be on the radar screen of any business that's evaluating a move in, say, hosted email in an online way. When you get to that point, Microsoft, great marketers as they are, they're building Power BI capabilities into that service fabric. So that idea of being able to leverage one vendor, one tool, and the ability to come up to speed on that tool should be far less time-consuming and expensive as a competing tool that has nothing to do with Office 365 or nothing to do with Microsoft products. Power BI will be built into all of those components of Office 365 and SharePoint and Yammer and all these different capabilities you see in the Microsoft cloud environment, Azure in particular. Power BI is prevalent throughout. So from a business point of view, to truly leverage that investment best, Power BI is a great alternative to some good tools. I'm not saying Tableau and Qlik. You haven't heard me say they're bad. They're good tools. But at the same time, if a business truly wants to leverage group knowledge and true collaboration around a product, Power BI certainly should be heavily considered, especially in organizations that have already moved to or are planning to move to an Office 365 and/or Azure-based Microsoft cloud environment.
Okay, thanks, Greg. And the questions continue to swarm in here, still on the same slant generally. A question from Dane, please compare Power BI and Cognos. Would your answer differ that much, or any specifics you'd want to call out there?
Yeah, I think I'll leave that one alone, as similar to the Tableau and Qlik. Cognos is that's a pretty sizable tool. And what I think you're finding too, and this maybe I'll use this question as a point of differentiation perhaps. We're trying to view Power BI as this all-encompassing, all-up kind of tool, and it is. I'm not trying to sell it short. That's what I've said earlier in this presentation. Cognos and some others of that magnitude, they can be a bit niche in their industry segments because they are larger. But they pride themselves on the ability to deal with large sets of data. And Power BI on its own can be a very powerful end user tool. Power BI connected to a large SQL environment or a data lake or those kinds of capabilities, or or homogenizing data from all different data sources is equally as powerful. So Power BI is more attuned to enabling the end user than it is around a powerful segment on the back end around data analysis. It's a combination, but a tool like Cognos, and perhaps I should pause, I don't want to speak out of turn, Cognos really plays more on that back end data management and data size capability, whereas Power BI would leverage even Cognos data or SQL Server data or Oracle data or SAP or Power BI would be able to leverage all those things from an end user enabling capability. So I may have botched that one, but there's some good comparisons there, but some differentiations as well.
Okay, thanks, Greg. And I think it almost answers our next question from Ben, and I know we've got some more content coming in. We'll have some more Q&A time at the end, so feel free to keep those questions flowing, folks. And you've probably answered this one already, but it was kind of the question of like how common is it, and this comes from Ben, how common is it to run two BI tools at once in an organization, e.g., for example, Power BI and Tableau? I think you already kind of hit that one, but maybe just a quick.
No, it's interesting. Sometimes that's driven by business units or large organizations with multiple departments. Sometimes you get a new hire that says, I know Tableau, and before you know it, 3 or 4 people in the department have Tableau as well. Running them side by side, I would tell you from a business point of view, doesn't make sense. You're spending money in both places, and there's no ability for those people to collaborate and share knowledge. So I think from a soft skills perspective, I would look more critically at that kind of a situation and just decide which one's right for the business. And again, I love Power BI. I'm an advocate for it, but maybe there's a business that says, I really want Tableau. My people know it. I don't want to train them on something different. That might be the right decision for them to go down. I believe truly that Power BI is a bit more integratable than a Tableau, and certainly more economical.
Great, thanks, Greg. And if I can learn a tool like Power BI, I'm sure everyone else should be able to as well. But so, Greg, I know we've got more questions coming in. Feel free to keep them rolling, folks. But I know you've got some key content you wanted to get through for the balance of the presentation as well. So back over to you, Greg. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Okay, so let's transition the conversation. Let's transition the conversation to say, okay, I'm kind of interested in Power BI. It might be the right thing for me to do, but geez, how do I get started, and what does this all mean? And I think these next couple of slides actually will help provide some coloring to some of these questions we asked about some competing products and those types of things. So from a straight up Power BI standpoint, how do I get it? Power BI is one of those things I call a freemium service. You can tap into Power BI for free today. You can go out to powerbi.com, download the tool. Little asterisk here, big note, if you're not on Office 365 or you're not using some Microsoft Cloud service, I'd encourage you maybe to not use your corporate email. What happens is they actually will create an Azure tenant with your corporate email domain, and it can provide confusion later on if the company does decide to go to Office 365. They'll wonder why they can't get that domain. But nonetheless, you can still download the tool for free, and you can get started using it today for free. And it gives you the ability to do some authoring of reports, some ability to do that ad hoc data exploration around visualizations and those types of things. And it's a great way to quickly get up to speed on what does self-service analytics really look like. And for small businesses, this is really great. They can look at maybe the QuickBooks file, but Microsoft has done some things that, again, it's freemium, so it's free to a point. And a lot of organizations get caught with a great tool, but I'm starting to do some things that require me to maybe license this thing fully. And that's where the Power BI Pro license comes in. So this is another subscription license. You pay for it on a monthly basis. The list price, I believe, is $9.99. Let's call it 10 bucks. So 10 bucks a user per month, you would have Power BI Pro. So you'd have every capability that comes in Power BI, including the ability to publish out to the app service. So there is there's a public website, app.powerbi.com, that would tie back into that corporate email domain, that Azure tenant, to safeguard and keep your data private. But just the same, that ability to take Power BI dashboards and publish them out to the web and share them with people in a web-based environment. That idea of being mobile, having phone and Apple Watch access to the data. Being able to publish online is really that key capability. Now you can imagine that at some level, at $10 per user per month, boy, in a large enough organization, this probably will get a little cost prohibitive. And come this past July, Microsoft changed the licensing just a bit, and they introduced this idea of capacity licensing. So what this is actually is the ability to have your own premium capacity of cloud storage for your data, where you can publish your files into this premium capacity. And what this means is, for a flat fee per month, you have the ability to publish your reports into a particular area of really Azure storage that Microsoft has carved out around compute and capacity and storage, for you then to have any number of people access it and interact with that data. So the idea here is anybody who's interacting with data typically needs a license. And so the premium capacity gives it ability to buy one license and allow everybody access to it. So we'll see later on with the pricing around some of these things here. But again, it's free for end users, and you can embed them in your own solutions with this premium capacity. So this is a new licensing vehicle for Power BI. You still need to license the Power BI Pro to author and create the content in the dashboards. So in an organization of, say, 10,000 people, they might license Power BI Pro for 100 to create the dashboards, but then they buy the Power BI premium capacity for the balance of their people to be able to interact and see that data. So a slightly different view of what this freemium means. Here's a little quick chart here that outlines what that looks like. You can see very clearly what's in, what's out in terms of the ability to use the free version. So you can still tap into a number of data sources, you can still do some publishing, but you really can't share it. You can't really export it. No way to, if you have Office 365, you may be aware of Office 365 groups. No way to really interact with Office 365 groups on that free version. The Power BI Pro does. So as I mentioned, as some of the questions asked just a moment ago, Power BI Pro is an end user enablement tool. It's the downloadable tool that now gets licensed to be able to do all these things. So you could invest in Power BI Pro and never buy a piece of infrastructure. You don't need premium capacity. You don't need SQL servers. You just need the Pro license to be able to tap into these data sources you may have and to be able to create some really captive visualizations. So let's break open this premium capacity a little bit. So as I mentioned, premium capacity gives you the ability to publish your visualizations and dashboards to Azure storage. Microsoft is backing it up with some compute, which means just picture CPU and RAM kind of idea, and some storage. And as you can tell, at $10 per user per month, at 501 users, Power BI Premium becomes more economically feasible and advantageous from an organization standpoint. So if you're going to license more than 500 people with Power BI Pro, buy the premium pricing at a plan 1. And what you see here in terms of the tiers, this is just the idea of allowing more storage and compute behind and supporting those visualizations and those dashboards, which really, more often than not, is really a reflection of how many concurrent people do have accessing this. So just as a quick view of this, at the plan 1, a recommendation is about 1,700 people concurrently accessing and dealing and drilling into and interacting with those dashboards online. Rough numbers, because everyone's data set is different, everyone's data model is different, but by and large, for about $5,000 per month, you can have about 1,700 people interacting with your data online in a very good experience for that flat rate. What's also interesting about this, though, is that premium capacity does also include the Power BI report server. This is a new capability that Microsoft announced recently. Power BI Report Server is very usable for maybe highly regulated or businesses that require lots of compliance and regulations around their services and their what they do. So Power BI Report Server allows companies to host it's a downloadable executable. You'd install it on a server. It doesn't have to be on a SQL server. It could be on a separate machine. It's a standalone product. But rather than publishing your data out to the web, because it's not secured and you have compliance issues and you've got to keep it on-prem, you can publish it internally and still have the same kind of capability. You can still have mobile access, you can still have embedded access, and you can still have lots of people accessing that data internally. So that premium capacity actually has two sides to it, both a cloud element and an on-prem element. Now, in addition to that, here's another slightly different view, but it also includes not only the premium capacity, but this idea of an embedded product license. So for those organizations that maybe do have lots of mobile applications and they want to embed dashboards and capabilities and they want to use APIs. Now we're clearly into the development world, so if this doesn't resonate with some folks, that's okay. But this is really towards those companies who are heavily cloud enabled, building mobile and cloud applications, SaaS applications. There's an ability to embed, just like premium capacity, but embed those dashboards into those applications with some supporting infrastructure behind that's cloud-based, right? Microsoft is providing these embedded capabilities through a series of API calls and other integration points to bring life to those dashboards and those visualizations inside of those mobile applications. So you can see here where this was really introduced very recently within the last quarter. So it's new pricing, new licensing, and new abilities, again, to enable businesses to take action on data. That idea to monetize my data so I can do something really great. In addition, we look at the future. So maybe you've really bought into Power BI and you want to know what the future holds. So Microsoft is doing a ton of work in this space, as are others, centered around this idea of Microsoft Cortana Analytics Suite. And it's a whole story around big machine learning, data lakes, data warehouses, how I can use event stories and event triggers to drive data analytics and machine learning, and this idea of predictive analytics, but really for big data sets. This is not for everybody. I wanted to include this slide for a couple of reasons. First of all, you notice how Power BI is still mentioned. So if you deal with a Cognos or other big database mining application, this is where you see Power BI still have a part to play, but there are these other parts of that story when you get into that larger data set, and they all are cloud enabled, they're mobile first, they're mobile ready, they're cloud ready, and you can tap into them very quickly and easily. Plus you see the support for the machine learning and analytics as well. In addition, and maybe finally on this slide, we look at that next one over there to the right, the personal digital assistant. One of the things I like to do in a demonstration is on a Windows 10 machine connected to my Power BI tenant, I can ask Cortana a question. I can ask her, hey, show me what revenue looked like last month. And Cortana connected into my Power BI environment, my online hosted environment that Microsoft is providing to me, comes back and shows me those dashboards in my start menu in Windows 10. Start menu, right? So I can see these dashboards right there and I can interact with them. I don't have to open an application. I don't have to go to a browser. I don't have to look at my mobile device. I can sit at my desktop and just ask questions. And this data comes back very highly visual and be able to interact with that data right there on my desktop. So really powerful capability that Microsoft is building into every part of their ecosystem, every part of their cloud services is being touched by analytics and Power BI as an enabling force. So again, let's get back to reality here and today's world. This is a bit of a confusing slide, but I try to include some things here around not only the free and the pro versions, but if you look over to the right around the premium capacity and the report server, these are the different kind of background enabling services and tools around Power BI. I want to call attention to the middle part of this slide. And I've tried to capture this as in terms of three categories around creating, managing, and consuming. And you may be a business that's done a great job of creating data and content. Managing it, it's pretty good. I've got some really talented folks that are managing that stuff in my data centers. But boy, I can't share any of this really easily. And I really would, and part of that might be really trying to get secure with who I'm sharing it with. That's really hard. And so what I wanted to do was just as a quick example, but any business is probably somewhere in this evolution of these three columns in the middle of this slide. And I wanted to try to simply point out the fact that Power BI has a part to play in any one of these aspects of the business. So maybe you've got an application, an analytics application that makes it really easy to share, but creating and managing that data is difficult. Power BI is one tool that will help plug into whatever you've got today and to begin to homogenize that data in very cohesive, intelligent ways, again, so that business can drive success and drive action behind that data. Lastly, and I hope this isn't overstepping too much, but typically we get asked about how does an organization get engaged, right? So we've got a number of people on this call today. They're probably representatives that maybe someone said, hey, go check this out, see if it's something that we should be looking into. How does the rest of the organization get on board? Well, there are two offerings from a soft choice standpoint that we can provide. But the first here is around called a dashboard in an hour. And I want you to view this as how to drive awareness and buy-in and get those heads nodding like, yeah, I gotta have that. How do you drive that into your business? So this first one, dashboard in an hour, really is focused at business owners, department heads, key decision makers or leaders within the organization, the non-technical, maybe executive leadership team. They're driving the vision and strategy for the business, and data needs to play a part in that. How do we get them on board with, hey, this might be a great tool for us to use? We can typically do this in about 75 minutes, and we would provide a demonstration, a light demonstration of the tool and the capability of again, publishing out to the web, and the ability of how multifaceted Power BI is, and beginning to help that organization come up to speed on a little faster. There's no cost for that. We can do it remotely. We can do it on-prem, whichever you might like to see. We certainly could get engaged with that. Second, this dashboard in a day. Now, this one is a bit more of a deep dive. This one is really, really geared towards your analysts and business report writers within the organization, where they get hands-on with the tool. There's heavy lab work here. It's a facilitated discussion to get those people up to speed and comfortable using the tool, typically a 6 to 8 hour engagement. But when they leave that room, they will know this tool very, very well, and typically can go back to their desk and start using it today, or that same day. So with that, I'd like to close out. Thank you all very much for your time. Richard, if you want to wrap us up real, please.
Certainly will do. Thanks so much, Greg. I appreciate the insight and a great overview of the possibilities. So one of the things we like to do is to get a little bit of feedback from each of you who's participating on the session, make sure we're hitting the mark, as well as an opportunity for you to dig in a little bit deeper. So if you want to understand a little bit more about the dashboard in a day, perhaps you've got some analysts you'd like to do a deeper dive on, there'll be an opportunity in the eval form once the webinar closes for you to provide your feedback there. Again, your feedback is really valued, and we would really appreciate that at the close of the segment. Greg, thanks so much for taking us through this. And also to everyone who spent the hour with us today, we really do appreciate your time. There's a few unanswered questions that we weren't able to get to. We'll take those offline, and we'll connect with you independently. So again, thanks for your time, and have a great day from all of us here at Soft Choice.